guys to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun.
All right, guys, today's date, March 19th, 2025, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan on the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we do get started, guys, let you know that we do pride ourselves on being a news podcast, which means we only bring the most reputable, insightful sources from award-winning journalism done on very select media sites. And when I mean media sites, I mean those people that actually do the work and the research and properly inform you. We don't do sensational news like Fox News, The Blaze, The Daily Beast, where extreme left or extreme right you get your views from. At the same time, guys, we do try to watch our language, but words do fly. At the same time, guys, there may be things of a graphical nature that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers. So if you're discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So how do we start this? I told you one of the things that's going to happen is just that as we are getting way too comfortable with those of a certain neo-Nazi or those of a certain racist terms, or just no longer hiding behind hoods and whatnot. And I sat there and told you what would happen when the government fails to actually listen to the citizens and does actually more protecting them than protecting us. Well, history repeats itself. A black community has decided to form its own watchdog party, if you will, and I'm all for it.
Turn now to one community in Ohio, which is now the center of a growing national debate about civil rights, hate speech, and the Second Amendment. NBC News correspondent and NBC News Now daily anchor Morgan Radford visited the town of Lincoln Heights, where residents have formed an armed community defense group in the wake of a neo-Nazi rally. Morgan joins us now. You were there just on Tuesday. What did the residents tell you about what's going on?
Yeah, I was there just this week. John, it was fascinating because what's interesting is that this town was founded during the Great Migration back in the 1920s as a refuge for black citizens, which is why it was especially painful when neo-Nazis suddenly appeared in this 3,000 person majority black town. But they decided to fight back, taking up arms and patrolling their own streets. Now they're at the center of a much larger debate about protection and free speech and who gets it.
These aren't police officers or soldiers.
They're business owners, their fathers, their sons, daughters.
These are civilians, members of the Lincoln Heights Safety and Watch program.
It's a duty. Okay, let's go.
The duty, protecting their neighborhood, the majority black village of Lincoln Heights, Ohio.
Ain't nobody scared of you.
After neo-Nazis held a rally here last month, carrying rifles, waving swastikas, and hurling racial slurs, just moments before children were let out of school. At the time, law enforcement officials said the neo-Nazis did not break any laws, but an investigation by county prosecutors is ongoing. Weeks later, the KKK came with these flyers.
First African-American community above the Mason-Dixon line.
Safety and Watch Group spokesperson Durrance Daniels says the police did not do enough, which was more chilling because the town was founded in the 1920s as a safe haven for black residents.
Lincoln Heights is our home. If somebody broke into your home, you call the police, and the police says, you know, if they do it again, we haven't broken any law, so we're just going to allow them to break into your home again. What would you do?
Are you worried at all that having a potentially armed response could just create more friction, create more danger?
I'll answer that by saying I've never felt safer as a black man in my community than I have right now.
The mayor of Evendale, which oversees the police force that responded that day, said in a statement to NBC News, "Our emphasis on de-escalation and public safety resulted in the incident's resolution without injuries to any of the persons involved."
Come on.
But residents here say they can't afford to wait. Every day, the Safety and Watch Group escorts children to school and patrols the streets.
Why do you all wear masks?
Those Nazis, we have reports of them finding our backgrounds, so we're not hiding ourselves from the residents, but we're protecting our family from what we're doing out here.
While many locals do support the security group, some, like business owner Eric Ruffin, say they wish the group wasn't needed.
We don't want to become what we hate. You know, we don't want to become a group of people that walk around feeling like we have a reason in America to have to protect ourselves.
And this community
Stand up.
Stand up.
is not backing down.
And that alone should tell you a lot right there, because number one, I don't understand the business owner. The business owner is the guy that kills me. Hey, Brian, man, thanks for joining in. I appreciate it. Love this right here for the real. No, I agree. I love the idea, because this is what happens. And I tell people all this, and I tell people all this time, there's a history lesson behind this. I tell people, you cannot depend on the police to protect you from racist people. They'll protect the racists before they protect you. And what happened, the same thing in history has happened, where police say they're de-escalating, but at the same time, they're really not. They're trying to protect and serve, because we covered this story where those neo-Nazis went to Lincoln Heights and the cops pretty much just formed a line between the people, the residents there, who wanted those folks to go, who wanted to challenge them. Now, keep in mind what they said. The so-called Nazi protesters were armed and at the same time could have posed a danger to children. So what do? They follow the Second Amendment. You have formed your own local militia. In the local militia, you have the right to bear arms to defend your home. And these people have done everything legally. And it's amazing where folks are going, well, why should you have to do that? Because as a black person in America, you better arm yourself. Because, again, you can't expect the police. Now, I did say there's a history lesson behind this, because I love the fact that they are out there in the neighborhoods protecting children, looking out for one another, because that's what they used to do in the past, historically. Even more so, the Black Panthers. I love this example, because here's how you know America has never really been pro-gun. They have been against people of color with pro-gun. Enter the Black Panthers and the Mumford Act. If you don't know what that is, stick around for a second.
Entering the Capitol building armed with guns in protest 57 years ago. Thanks for being with us here at 6. As you can tell, lots going on. Yeah. I'm Tony Lopez.
A lot to get to, and of course, we're keeping you up to date. I'm Hunter Sowards, and tonight's Politics at Large. Steve there at the Capitol with Steve, the lasting legacy of that protest. As Tony said, 57 years to the day.
Of course, it captivated the country then. It's hard to even imagine now, but on this day in 1967, entering the California Capitol building with an open carry gun was not against the law.
Yeah. All right.
Hey, Charlie.
Black Panthers in their trademark berets and leather jackets carrying handguns and shotguns through the halls of the California State Capitol. State police only stopping the men after 10 had reached the assembly chambers. The shocking 1967 protest was aimed at stopping state gun control legislation seeking to prevent the Black Panthers' police patrols, their practice of following officers in black neighborhoods. Black Panther Bobby Seale spoke about the Black Panther mission then.
We don't hate nobody because of their color. We hate oppression.
People come from all over the country to sit here.
Bill X. Jennings took me into his Sacramento Black Panther archive room to show me the history of the movement, including this photo of Jennings walking into a courtroom with Black Panther founder Huey Newton. Jennings said it was the Capitol protest that put the Black Panther movement on the map.
That particular incident went worldwide because this is an image of a black man, you know, standing up for themselves. Like, hey, we're not going to take this anymore.
It caused us to really think about what folks were willing to do in desperate circumstances, for sure.
Sacramento State professor Dale Allender says this 1967 social justice protest opposing gun control laws then stands in stark contrast to most social justice movements now.
And they see guns as part of the problem, our over-militarization in schools, in communities.
It's my intention to make it a felony to bring a loaded weapon into the state capitol.
Following the Black Panther protest, Republican Assemblymember Don Mulford added an urgency clause to his gun control legislation, passed it, and then Governor Ronald Reagan signed it into law, making it a felony to publicly carry a loaded firearm without a permit.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's history. That's what I've been trying to tell you guys. For all those that do cover the history, the Black Panthers were the first ones to look at the Second Amendment and go, yeah, we can arm ourselves, and there's nothing the police can do about it. But you know what scared them more? The fact that black people were arming themselves and protect themselves and could follow the police as they were trying to, police them in their own neighborhoods. This actually led to the Mumford Act, to where then a Governor Ronald Reagan panicked into making it sign because, God forbid you can't have people of color walk through the assembly halls, loaded. But that just goes to show you the history behind this. Whenever black people are armed, legislation comes out of nowhere. And I mean fast-tracked legislation. Wow, that's going to be a hard word to say tonight. Fast-tracked legislation. And it happened with the Mumford Act. It happened with the fact of right that as much as they tried to affect full autos and things of that nature, the basis of all this legislation came from the fact that people of color were arming themselves. What has that got to do with today? Well, in Lincoln Heights, you have the neighborhood watch, and they're springing up everywhere because people are tired of seeing Nazi rhetoric. People are tired of seeing KKK rhetoric. And yes, I have sat there and said many times on the show, you have the right to free speech. You truly do. You're not absolved from what you say, though. I could go around town in downtown Nashville right now and say, all white people ain't shit. Now, what happens after that? It's a consequence. I'm not absolved from it. In the same sense where if a Nazi person decides to go into a black neighborhood spouting off Nazi rhetoric and throwing the signs and all that stuff, if he or she or they get stomped out, that's their consequence. They will never be condemned for what they'll never, you can say whatever you want to say, but you are not absolved from what happens next. And people are tired of it. People are tired of seeing this stuff to where, especially World War II veterans, I always want to ask them how they feel seeing Nazi stuff concerning the fact they fought these guys so long ago. But at the same time, neighborhoods are rising up. Neighborhoods are saying we cannot depend on law enforcement. Neighborhoods are saying we cannot depend on the government. So they are taking their rights as Americans and arming themselves. Me as a gun owner, I see no issue with it because, again, with mostly black neighborhoods, you only have each other. And that is a beautiful thing when unification does start to happen with our people. But again, I'm not mad about it because the next time a Nazi decides they want to do something, hey, F around and find out. Just saying. But meanwhile, with the over toasted orange, well, let's do this first. Yes, this just hit exclusive. Yes, we saw this coming, but let me explain why you shouldn't panic after this.
With breaking news tonight. NBC News has just learned that President Trump plans to sign an executive order closing down the Department of Education. The move fulfilling a campaign promise to shutter the agency, which has long been a target of conservatives. But it's unclear how he'll legally do that since Congress needs to sign off on officially closing a department of this kind. The order would be the culmination of weeks of effort by the Trump administration to wind down DOE. Trump's education secretary, Linda McMahon, has overseen a roughly 50% cut to the agency's workforce in what she has called the, quote, final mission of the department. The Education Department oversees tens of billions of dollars in grant money to schools across the country. But conservatives for years have said control of education should be returned entirely to the state and local level. They say it would empower parents to make choices about their children's education. For more on this, let's get right to NBC's senior White House correspondent, Garrett Haake, who joins us live tonight from the North Lawn. Garrett, this just breaking, but walk us through what do we know about this order at this point?
Yeah, Ellison, I'm holding a copy of the fact sheet that will accompany this order when the president signs it tomorrow. It is the culmination of weeks of work from this White House and decades of work within the conservative movement that has long viewed the Department of Education as something of a boogeyman. The order directs the Secretary of Education, in this case, Linda McMahon, to take every necessary step she can to facilitate, this says, the closure of the Department of Education and return education authority to the states. The White House takes some pains through information we've been given from a senior administration official to say things like Title I funding, student loans, and students with disabilities aid won't be touched in this effort. Frankly, Allison, some of this is aspirational. As you pointed out in the lead, it will take an act of Congress to ultimately shut down the Department of Education and transfer its authority back to the states. But the administration can take additional steps, like what they've already done, to eliminate positions within the department, fire career staff, and try to shift responsibilities elsewhere within the federal government. Now, the president intends to sign this executive order tomorrow here at the White House in a ceremony where he'll be joined by some supportive governors, including from Texas, Florida, and Indiana, where they're champing at the bit to get more of this control at state level. But some of my reporting over the last couple of weeks is that other states are not quite as ready, perhaps, to take over this authority. And so I think what you're seeing here today is an effort by the White House to take the next step in what could still be a quite lengthy process to accomplish this goal of transferring as much as possible of education authority back to the states. I will add one other note that's in this fact sheet suggesting we'll see some language to this effect in the EO, that what's left of the Department of Education, this order says, the funds will not be allowed to advance what they call DEI or gender ideology, another issue that this White House has been intently focused on going back to Inauguration Day. Ellison?
Garrett, as this idea had come up and seemed more immediate, particularly with those layoffs that happened at the department, a lot of people shifted to worrying about what it would mean for student loans. Is there any indication that there would be some sort of immediate impact felt by this executive order, or is it going to be a wait until Congress gets involved situation?
I think it's very much an open question. I mean, if you look at something like FAFSA and the federal process by which many American students apply for student loans, if not the Department of Education, who would administer that? How would it work? Where would you send your questions, and who would control that money if you're not applying to a school within your state? I think all of these are questions that are going to have to be answered either by the federal government or by the states if they get that far. But again, it's hard for me as a former congressional correspondent to see how they're able to muster the votes, especially in the Senate, to pass legislation that would be necessary to make this broader goal a reality anytime soon.
And Garrett, really quickly before I let you go, they would need on Capitol Hill some Democrats to vote in favor in order to break the filibuster rule, right?
Yeah, that's right. This would require 60 votes in the Senate. I don't know that those 60 votes exist there. And frankly, I don't know if the majority of votes exist in the House. So, again, some states are going to be more ready for this action than others at the jump. And that could cause some cold feet from otherwise supportive House Republicans if their own states say, we're not ready for this kind of responsibility for the entirety of the educational system.
Okay, so let me say this first. Everybody, deep breath and relax. Let me explain something about executive actions. Executive actions are not immediate. Executive actions take congressional measures. So, with those two things in mind, relax, because I'll tell you why. The two journalists in that video said one thing I want people to hang on very closely. In order for that idiot and his other ketamine idiot Musk to go after a Project 2025 goal of shutting down the Department of Education, you would need the Democrats to go along with the Republicans. Let me say that again. In order for a Project 2025 goal of shutting down the Department of Education, the Republicans would have to have Democrats on their side in the House and in the Senate. And the words of Hamilton, you don't have the votes. You don't have the votes. You don't. Republicans can sit there all day saying, oh, this will be great. Telling the parents, anytime a conservative talks about school choice, understand it's not about school choice, but we'll get to that. But as far as closing down the Department of Education, they don't have the votes. They know they don't have the votes. Because why? Any Democrat that votes to close down the Department of Education may as well go ahead and resign now, because they will not make it through the midterms. They won't make it. Not a Democrat should sign for this unless they're not going to plan to stay after the midterms. Republicans can get their party to toe the line all they want to, but without Democratic support, even through reconciliation, this cannot happen. So right there should tell you everything you want to know, that Trump, unless he gets Democrats on board, is not happening. So what is he doing? He is directing Linda McMahon, who is way not the person to be the Secretary of Education. What do conservatives do best when they can't close something down? They starve it. They starve it. They remove funds. They withhold funds. They cut bills in half. They cut funding in half. They starve it. They give it more restrictions, more standards, to where those things, where records will show a consistent line of failure, and then somehow blame the Democrats because they're not in control, but yet somehow Republicans aren't, but they are. But they'll blame the Democrats for something, for a problem that they created, but they believe they have the solution for it. It's like you started a fire and then you're coming back in as the fire department wondering who struck the match. You're holding the match. So that's what Republicans want to do. Now, school choice. Let me tell you, that is the biggest crock of shit. It is. School choice, when said by conservatives, is the biggest crock of shit. Why? Because they still want to go after Department of Education public funds money. Why? Because their private school friends who run private schools would love nothing more to get free money. So they introduced school choice. Even in my home state of Tennessee, idiot governor, shoot, I can't think of his name to save my life right now. Governor Bill Lee, there we go. That idiot has been championing school choice, saying that parents should be able to send their kids wherever they want. It sounds great in imaginary land. Oh, here's the voucher. This voucher will give you maybe $10,000 to $15,000. Private schools in Tennessee, especially Middle Tennessee, can go anywhere above $20,000 to almost $40,000 to almost $50,000, depending on which private school you go to. That voucher is not going to get you very far. But alas, if you're a more well-off parent that's paying, let's just say, $20,000 a year in school tuition, and let's just say you got school choice, well, you just got a $10,000 discount. But again, the money comes from the school choice bullshit, comes from public schools. And that's been the conservatives. Conservatives have salivated over the Department of Education. They've salivated over Medicare and Medicaid, and they salivate over Social Security. They want to get their hands on the last bastions of money in the government, just because they can kick it back down to their friends who want to privatize it and basically make a killing off of it. What we're actually seeing here, guys, is venture capitalism of our government. And at the same time, right now in their sights is the Department of Education, which I love the fact that they sit there and say, well, states are not ready. I've said it once. I've said it many times on this podcast. I'll say it again. In the unlikely future that the Department of Education is closed down and education goes back to states' rights, if you are a blue Democratic state, chances are your education is fine. If you are a red state, which, by the way, every red state in the U.S. is in the low numbers for education. Tennessee, Mississippi, Kentucky, Alabama, Georgia. I can keep going down the line. Every red state or every conservative control state, lowest in education. And if you're in a red state, my friend, you are screwed. And also with the FAFSA, with aid and Pell Grants, these are not going to be touched. Really? Who's going to be handling them? The Department of Education handles all Pell Grants, FAFSA, and student loans through their financiers. So if the Department of Education is gone, these three things you say are not going to be touched, who are they going to be financed by? I've also pointed out that if you do have student loans that are through the Department of Education and the Department of Education has been closed down, you could argue in court that you no longer have to pay on your loans because the creditor has now been disassembled. And that could also lead to lawsuits. So all Trump has done, ladies and gentlemen, all Trump has done was simply put, cause divisions, unnecessarily divisions, but has caused divisions that literally do nothing except expose what they're wanting to do. That's pretty much it. So again, guys, I know I said doom scrolling, which is basically you going through and every time Trump says something, people worry. But relax. Executive orders do not mean immediately done. Anything as far as the Department of Education needs majority congressional approval. If the Democrats aren't in it, we'll be fine. At the same time, we should be worried as far as what they want to do, because this is not about school choice, ladies and gentlemen. This is about private and religious schools getting more money from the state, and they're doing so under the guise that allowing parents to decide where their children go to, where their children want to go to school. And again, it's a hustle and it's bullshit. But speaking of bullshit, guys, we weren't too far from a government shutdown, and honestly, it should have happened. But let's get into how that happened first. Trump signing it.
ABC's Vaughn Hilliard, who's posted up near the White House. We want to start, though, on Capitol Hill with Sahil. Sahil, if you will, walk us through what's happening in the Senate right now when it comes to this vote and keeping the government open.
Hey, Yasmin. Well, just in the last few seconds, within the last minute or so, the Senate gavelled out this key vote on this House 6-month bill to keep the government open, avert a shutdown at midnight tonight. The vote was 62 to 38. 62 to 38, which means it has enough votes. It has the 60 votes it needs to break a filibuster. What comes next is 4 amendments, all of which are expected to fail. This is part of a time agreement that was negotiated. And then final passage of the bill needs a simple majority. This bill is headed to President Trump's desk. It is not what most Democrats wanted, but Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer cobbled together just enough votes to help Republicans break a filibuster. He argued that the worst possible option would be a government shutdown, even though Democrats strongly objected to many of the provisions in this bill. They noted they weren't at the table to negotiate it. This was negotiated and written between Speaker Johnson and the White House. And I'm going to name you the 10 Democrats who provided those crucial votes. Senators Cortez Masto, Durbin, Fetterman, Gillibrand, Hassan, King, Peters, Schatz, Schumer, and Shaheen. Several of them are in Schumer's leadership team. Several of them are retiring at the end of session and don't have to face voters. In other words, don't have to deal with the immense amount of voter anger from Democrats who urge them to kill this bill.
You used the word anger, Sahil. I think it's an important word because obviously you've got a lot of Democrats that are certainly angry with Chuck Schumer right about now and supporting not only Republicans, but ultimately the president and getting this bill across the finish line, not calling for him essentially to step aside. How serious are these efforts this hour?
I think we're going to find out. We don't know how serious they are in the Senate in particular, because there are at least some Democrats who were in the vote no, hope yes category. They didn't want to shut down, but they also didn't want to be on record supporting this bill that a lot of their base and a lot of voters despise and wanted them to kill. So the question is, does that immense amount of anger that we've seen directed at Chuck Schumer from House Democrats, from outside prominent Democrats, and from liberal activists, does that convert to anger within the Senate of Democratic senators as well? Because this is their decision whether to keep Schumer as their leader. Suffice it to say, this is the worst position I've seen Chuck Schumer in his 8 years at the helm.
Wow.
In other words, Democrats, y'all know y'all fracked up, right? And Schumer, who knew that Trump would literally and figuratively get a gift from the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer, who, along with 10 other Judases, 10 Democrats, 30 pieces of silver. Hey, let's use the excuse that we have to keep the government going, even though the bill that the Republicans are pushing forward is one of the worst bills, but looming the government shutdown. Because, when the government shuts down, benefits end, although Social Security payments still continue, but benefits end for people that are depending on them. At the same time, government workers are furloughed. But hey, senators and representatives are still getting paid. And I've always said this about government shutdowns, and I wish this was in the law. Whenever, every time we get close to a government shutdown, you know what happens? We kick the can down the road. Oh, we're going to, do a short bill for 6 months, 3 months, 8 months. And then once that time is up, then it becomes the issue of how do we balance the budget? Republicans want to, they claim that the Democrats spend wildly, yet as they are wanting to give tax breaks to their rich friends. Democrats are no longer in a position to actually do anything except go along for the ride or allow the government to shut down. Keep in mind, guys, what the Republicans want to do was continue Trump's tax breaks. They wanted to also cut Medicare and Medicaid by $880 billion. They wanted to cut SNAP, EBT, and other social services by $230 billion. They wanted to make cuts to the middle and lower classes while giving more tax cuts to the rich and the corporations. That, my friends, along with the 2016 Trump tax cuts, they wanted to make them permanent. It is a literal gift to the rich and the corporations. And Democrats all sat there and said, hell no. Well, not all Democrats, Tim plus Schumer. Because Schumer right now, as I've said before on this case, much like Pelosi, much like the old guard of the Democrats, the moderate Democrats, need to go. Now, are there more progressive Democrats? Yes. AOC, Bernie Sanders, Jasmine Crockett. There are a lot of other progressive voices. Unfortunately, the old guard still exists within the Democrats, led by Schumer. But again, I'm just curious. Does Schumer at this point, along with those 10 Democrats, to me are saying, we're going to vote on this and then we're out at the end of this term. And I thought to myself, how very fucking cowardly of you to make a decision like that. And then your ass gets to ride off in the sunset with your pension and everything that goes with it while your constituents suffer and you can't even face them to answer for the decision that you made for them. How fucking cowardly are you? And Schumer, which I'll get onto momentarily, but again, I just want to show this because not everybody is a fan of what he did.
Now, Kristen, let's start with this looming government shutdown. Again, Senator Schumer surprising a lot of Democrats by saying he is going to support that Republican measure to keep the government open. Walk us through his thinking and what's been the reaction to that decision overnight.
Well, Craig, the reason why Leader Schumer is going to vote to keep the government open, according to him, is because shutting the government down would have only emboldened President Trump and Elon Musk and their deep cuts of the government. But the reaction has been quite furious overnight. I spoke to a number of Democratic sources. While some say they're relieved by Schumer's moves, others say that they are expecting there to be a, quote, severe blowback from the base. Why? Well, because a number of Democrats feel as though keeping the government open is basically giving President Trump and Elon Musk a green light to move forward with their deep cuts. They note that there is no language in this bill that prevents the types of actions that we're seeing from the president and Elon Musk. And I do think it really underscores the fact that Democrats do not yet know what their strategy or messaging is for taking on President Trump in this moment, Craig.
And Kristen, President Trump, during the course of his election, he basically made the case that he was going to be the guy that brought down prices in this country. Yeah. He was going to save the economy. The economy's been tanking this week. Stock market's down, tariff war.
So I'll leave it there because it goes to the economy. And let's be honest, the economy is basically in the toilet. But what kills me about Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, who has only been House Minority Speaker for a little while. They're trying to enhance your calm. They are trying to sit there and say, well, let's keep our decorum. Meanwhile, people that support Democrats are like, fight back, resist, do what we sent you to do in the first effing place. Actually fight, don't concede. Of course, Schumer to me is one of those guys that, I'm sorry, much like Pelosi, you need to go. You need to go. It is beyond time for Schumer to go. It is beyond time because, again, he is a moderate Dem. And at the same time, I love that when he went on The View, and I'm going to show this, hopefully it plays because I don't know, sometimes, ABC's funny like this. But when he was on The View, he was asked about how he defended himself. And well, I'll just play the clip.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer's handling of the government shutdown fight. Yesterday on The View, Schumer defended his decision to vote with Republicans on a continuing resolution to avert a shutdown.
I knew it was a difficult choice, and I knew that I'd get a lot of criticism for my choice. But I felt as a leader I had to do it. Here's why. The CR bill was bad, no question. And it allowed a slush fund, which allowed money to be pushed around. And they could cut off anything they want simply by saying it's not essential. So, day 2, SNAP, food for poor kids, not essential. Day 4, mass transit, New York City subway and subways all over, not essential. Day 7, Medicaid, not essential. People don't need Medicaid, they should get their own health care. And this would happen over and over and over again, and there's no check.
Now Pelosi says she thinks Schumer gave in to Republicans too easily.
I myself don't give away anything for nothing. And I think that's what happened the other day. We could have, in my view, perhaps gotten them to agree to a third way, which was a bipartisan CR for 4 weeks, in which we could have had bipartisan legislation to go forward. They may not have agreed to it, but at least the public would have seen they're not agreeing to it.
Let's bring in Capitol Hill correspondent Jay O'Brien.
And it's crazy. Schumer sat there and tried to say, well, if we didn't agree, then they would get this, this, and this. Or they would be able to determine this is not essential and cut from it. What you didn't say was, in the bill, they couldn't do it. So what was this all for? Oh, well, no checks would get done, none of this. So you picked, again, the House, the Senate minority leader, the guy who was the head guy for the Democrats in the Senate, basically said this: we can let the government shut down, or we can take the lesser of two evils. And I'm just thinking to myself, you know what? That'd have been the one time I wish Democrats would listen to their voters, because that's why his book tours put on hold. That's why, they say due to security issues. It's not security. Nobody wants to beat your ass down, but they want to know why. Why, when you have been voted to go back to the Senate to defend the people's interests, they want to know why you decided to roll over and show your belly to Trump and idiot Musk. Why did you roll over and show your belly to a convict and a guy who has no idea how to run a business? Two guys who don't know how to run a business. But you rolled over, showed your belly, told them where to pat, and then you sat there like a good old boy and thought you did a great thing. No, Schumer, you fucked up. Hakeem Jeffries, you didn't call him out on it. You fucked up. Nancy Pelosi, well, I wish we could have gotten something. You basically gave away the farm. You should have got something for it. No. The one time you Democrats won our votes, the one time we kept saying to you guys, fight back. Let the government shut down. Because you basically rolling over and giving Trump and Elon everything they asked for and getting nothing is worse. I would have taken the shutdown. I would have said, no, he's not going to get what he wants. He's not going to get his slush fund. He's not going to get his ability to cut services how he sees fit. He's not going to get these things. And that should have been the united front for the Democrats. Just like I said on the State of the Union with Trump, you should never freaking been there. It should have just been one. It should have just been the Republicans, the Supreme Court justice that showed up, the Joint Chiefs of Staff who looked for real to be there, and it should have been no Democrats. That should have been that entire chamber. One side should have been freaking emptied. You could have sat there and showed your actual position instead of worry about decorum. Because let's not talk about decorum, because that Bobbitt and Marjorie Taylor Greene have pissed all of that decorum, and yet they are still allowed in that chamber. Whereas Representative Al Green pretty much explained his disdain, and then the next day, 10 Democrats voted to censor him along with Republicans. Miss me with the bullshit on Democrats right now, because you're not doing what you've been voted there to do. especially with Schumer, especially with Jeffries. It's the simple fact of the matter is you rolled over, showed your belly, and now there is a bill that is signed on that's going to be on that idiot's desk and is going to give him the bill that he wants. But your reasoning is we can let the government shut down, which, by the way, Schumer and those 10 people, if you hadn't heard already, will be resigning at the end of the term. So it's crazy that you can make a decision like that and you can't even face your constituents. Hence why his book tour is now on hold. Democrats are freaking cowards. Cowards they are. But the strangest thing about cowards is right now is that who knew that all the justice system right now, judges are blocking every executive order that Trump has put out, including the dismantling of U.S. aid, in which a judge says, no, that might be unconstitutional and also illegal.
All right, Catherine, what do we know?
So essentially what the judge is saying here is that Elon Musk's attempts to unilaterally dismantle USAID likely violated the Constitution. And essentially that obviously is as it relates to Elon, but also any of his employees, those Doge employees who helped this dismantling of it. Now, what's important here is what the judge says. It's unclear what implications this will have long term, but what the judge did do is that for any current USAID employees or those on administrative leave, the judge says that essentially the email, payment, security notification, and all other electronic systems, I'm quoting from him here, need to be reinstated. So again, while the judge did rebuke, of course, Musk's role within the Trump administration and his role with Doge in dismantling unilaterally USAID, it's really not clear exactly the implications of this decision, and the operations of USAID remain unclear at this point. But surely a rebuke of Elon Musk and his role, which the judge believes is unconstitutional.
So, Kim, from a legal perspective, do you think we could see a domino effect here?
In theory, I mean, what the judge basically said is that there was nothing in the record showing that Elon Musk's decisions were actually ratified or approved by people higher up in the chain of command, such as Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is the de facto head of USAID. So my guess is that the Trump administration will come back and do that and will rubber stamp Musk's decision making. But I do think this is an important ruling and a message from the federal judiciary that this is unconstitutional. And it frankly, I agree with that. The court basically found that, the appointments clause of Article 2 requires Senate confirmation for someone exercising the kind of power that Elon Musk is exercising. In addition, the court found that it's Congress that decides how agencies function. Congress creates them, Congress dissolves them. So, it's unclear really if, like I said, my expectation is the Trump administration will come back and check that box, but I don't think it's going to make this problem go away for the Trump administration, because it really does undermine the foundation of the separation of powers, which is that everyone who in the government who exercises significant authority should be accountable to the voters. Elon Musk is not.
And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, explains the whole kit and caboodle. That yes, Elon Musk, a man who was not publicly voted for, was given a position, a special government employee, a special government appointee by convict Trump. I refuse to call him president, by convict Trump. So again, imagine a guy whose powers sit right next to the president, given to by the president, wasn't voted in by the people, is now trying to cut jobs, which, by the way, not only with USAID, but also the EPA and other jobs he's tried to cut, all judges have stepped in and sat there and said, no, you can't do that. Reinstate said workers and back pay. So for all those workers that felt like they kind of got screwed, well, you're getting your money back and back pay. Not a bad thing. But again, with the judges stepping in and pretty much telling Trump, you can't do this, especially on deportation. Well, let's also be honest. Trump has always done what he's done best when he doesn't get his way. He goes to Twitter with his little chubby fingers, has some McDonald's, and then decides to spout the bullshit. This time, he went after judges.
ignored his order blocking the deportations of more than 200 alleged gang members. President Trump posted on social media calling for the judge to be impeached, saying he's radical left lunatic, a troublemaker, and agitator. Now Chief Justice John Roberts is responding. Senior Washington correspondent Devin Dwyer joins me now. Devin, justices normally stay out of anything remotely political. So how significant is it to hear from the Chief Justice on this?
This is an extraordinary development, Diane, and a sign just how big this case has become. And let's not forget that until recent times, it was also highly unusual for presidents to attack sitting judges hearing cases involving them. But of course, Donald Trump has made that the norm. And now for the second time, Chief Justice John Roberts, first time back in 2018, responding directly to the President of the United States and that attack. In a statement a short time ago, he said, for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. So the the Chief Justice pushing back on calls that Chief Judge of the district here in Washington, Judge Boasberg, be impeached for this decision, temporarily ordering the administration to halt these deportation flights over the weekend involving alleged Venezuelan gang members. And several Republican members of Congress also joined the president's calls. But here John Roberts saying, calm down, let's draw a line in the sand. That's why we have a judicial system. If you don't agree with the decision of a judge, you can appeal it, Diane. And that fight is continuing today in that judge's courtroom.
And this says a lot, doesn't it? It screams so much about Trump that when the convict can't get his way, let me go on the Truth Social, let me go on and do all this and say what I need to say, and I'm going to point out that the judges who are against me, the radicalists, we need to get them out, impeach them, get them out of here. That's been Trump's MO. The thing about it is, the reason why we're not surprised about this, he's done this to every political opponent. He's done this when he was running against Biden. He did this when he ran against Madam Vice President Harris. He did this when he ran against Rubio, when he ran against his Republican counterparts. This is his MO. When he doesn't get his way, he becomes Big Baby Trump. And Big Baby Trump only knows how to whine and cry, except nobody in his administration doesn't know how the Constitution really works. The judges have stepped in, and the judges have sat there and said, prove to us beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is the legal course, and 9 times out of 10 will rule in your favor. But you can't just sit there and play a dictator from the presidential seat with your powers unchecked. Welcome, convict Trump, to checks and balances, the home game. So again, it's amazing to me that now he's going after the Supreme Court. And here's the thing about Supreme Court. You can't remove somebody unless they've committed a heinous crime or congressional approval. It's amazing how congressional approval comes up for everything that Trump's trying to do. And that's why I sit there and told you guys, relax about the executive orders. Relax about the shock and awe. Because the things that he wants to do require congressional approval. And on top of that, if it's definitely illegal, judges are stepping in to stop him. He can whine and cry all he wants to, but unless he does things the right way or through some miracle gets congressional approval, which again, he doesn't have the votes, he can whine and cry on social media to his flock as he fleeces them for more money because grifters are gonna grift. But I'll give it to Chief Roberts because usually I thought he'd pull a Chuck Schumer and just roll over and show his belly too. But hey, judges actually does got some backbone. But speaking of things, guys, usually this is kind of a feel-good segment, but hey, I just want to point this out. Harvard University is doing what, well, pretty much other countries are doing. They're giving free tuition, room and board out there to those with low income. Again, it's a beautiful thing. And you can't beat that with a stick. And I want to freeze it right there and read it for all those that probably can't see it. Harvard University announced that tuition will be free for students for families with annual incomes of $200,000 or less starting in the 2025 to 26 academic year. Now, I have kept saying many a times, Trump loves the ill-educated because obviously they're going to the Department of Education. But just imagine for 1 second, imagine that there's free tuition because it's in Sweden, it's in Norway, it's in other different, in other different countries and sovereign states that tuition is free to where you can get an education, or it's very, very low in cost. We have been saying for the longest time for us to be the richest nation in the world that tuition at college universities is effing high and continues to go high for the same education that you're getting because nothing improves. So people are wondering, how is Harvard pulling this off? Good question. Could be anonymous donors. It could be the fact that they're just trying out something new. I don't know, but I'm not against it. For all those that do want to try to go to Harvard and get accepted into Ivy League, best of luck to you. But at the same time, can't knock it that we're actually seeing something good this week outside of this next thing. And before I play this next thing, I got to say this because this is going to be taken the wrong way, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. So we have the Frack We Got Here. Do not encourage arson, destruction of property in any way, shape, form, or fashion. That being said, I can laugh at this. Now, what's crazy is, again, and I say again because I feel like I got to repeat myself, we do not encourage arson, destruction of property in any shape, form, or fashion on how the Frack We Got Here. But it couldn't have happened to a guy who deserves it, because Elon Musk, again, he's still with Tesla, a company that he did not start. He bought it. Bought Starlink, again, a company he did not start. He bought it with Daddy's Diamond Mine money. Well, as people are finding out, Elon is a bit of a dick. Elon is basically, still the richest guy on earth, still out here, even though he is losing billions because his Tesla stock ain't what it used to be. Even more so that Tesla board members had to sell off over $100 million of stock in the last couple of weeks. Now, for a lot of people are wondering, what does that mean? Well, basically that means that when a company has to dump a lot of stock, that basically means that, well, it's becoming worthless. At the same time, Tesla sales have dropped. Cybertrucks and other vehicles, are being sold by the numbers. And even the insurance company, for a lot of people that may not understand this, the insurance companies, or I should say the industry in a whole, is considering no longer covering Tesla vehicles. Now, let me explain something to you. If the auto industry, the auto insurance industry, decides to no longer cover Tesla vehicles, that's the death knell. Because, well, obviously you can't drive a vehicle without insurance in the U.S. At the same time, if you do own a Tesla, you pretty much have a paperweight that you can't drive, because if you do get an accident, well, then it's on you. All the more reason why Tesla's in a panic. And only because this is actually how you hurt billionaires. You want to know how you hurt wealthy people? It's not with a fist. It's not with a Molotov cocktail. It's right at their bottom line. Watching all that money, watching Elon Musk see $800 billion worth of Tesla stock go out the window, did more damage than anything physically can be done to him. And trust me, if you don't think SpaceX and Starlink won't be taking hits soon, they will. Because again, Elon Musk has burned and rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. He is not a genius. He's not a wonder kid. He's an idiot who just happened to luck out because his daddy's got money and he knows how to basically how to pilfer a business and run into the ground before he moves on to something else. Don't believe me? He's doing the same thing in his dumbass Dodge department that he was doing overseeing Tesla. And I hate to say it again, we don't, above all else, don't encourage arson or any type of violence. But it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. But speaking of things that'll come back to haunt us, tourism. And again, Trump decided, and I say this all the time, Trump decided to basically put Canada in his sights. And what did Canadians do? Canadians do something that Trump thought he could just overlook. Canadians just last week sent back liquor that's American liquor. They sent it all back, not looking for payments. And now tourism may take a hit because Canadians are going somewhere else.
We're back with a look at how the escalating trade war between the U.S. and Canada is pushing travelers to shift their vacation plans away from the U.S. to Mexico and elsewhere. Look at some numbers here. According to a survey last week, 59% of Canadians said they're less likely to visit the U.S. in 2025. And more than a third of Canadians with U.S. travel plans had already canceled them. Travel expert for Going, Katie Nastro, joins us with more on this. Hey, Katie, good morning. Thanks for being here. So what impact just have you seen on travel to the U.S. since President Trump imposed these tariffs on some of our big trade partners? Is there really a significant change in attitudes towards just traveling to the U.S. for vacation?
Yeah, look, Savannah, the numbers don't lie. Looking specifically at road travel coming across the border from Canada year over year, starting in January, we have seen that number decrease, as well as Key Data, a short-term rental data company, showing that U.S. vacation rentals bookings from Canadians, especially in leisure destinations like Hawaii and Florida, are also have dropped in bookings, as well as we've even heard of Canadian carriers shifting their marketing. Porter, for example, highlighting destinations such as Mexico, the Caribbean, elsewhere, avoiding sort of marketing the U.S., as well as Air Canada shifting their schedules and really just looking forward and seeing that they are preemptively just identifying that Canadians are looking to go elsewhere, even despite having signaled that they're going to have encouraging bookings for future quarters. So it's a combination of all areas of the travel industry that we're seeing some pullback.
Yeah, actually, even in February, the numbers are already showing that there are fewer trips across the border compared to 2024, which I know is something that you're tracking. Where are people going instead?
Yeah, again, Canadian tourists are looking at places like Mexico, the Caribbean, Latin America, even promoting domestic tourism within Canada. Destinations that are bypassing, or they're looking at destinations that bypass the U.S. altogether that are easy to get to. Bermuda, for example, is expected to see an increase in Canadian tourism this year specifically as a result.
We're also starting to kind of understand the impact that this could potentially have. This is a little startling. The U.S. Travel Association now, they say just a 10% drop actually in Canadian travel to the U.S. could mean more than $2 billion lost in spending and then 14,000 job losses. I mean, how much of a concern is this to the industry?
Yeah, it's really an uncertain time, especially since we are just starting to come into our sort of peak seasons. We're in a shoulder season right now, but then the summer months are going to be here before we know it. And that's really where the travel industry thrives. And, with this economic uncertainty, political tensions, it's going to have ripple effects. And we're already seeing a result of that, especially from our friends to the north. Canadians were the top most traveled tourists to the US last year. And so, even that slight pullback that you just mentioned can have bigger impacts than we are sort of feeling just in the travel industry alone. It can really impact our economy.
There's been threats for more tariffs here, potentially, including 200% potentially on alcohol from the European Union. Any signs that people from those countries would stay away from the U.S.?
Yeah, again, and that's a great question, Savannah. We are in a shoulder season, so to speak, and we haven't quite heard of any pullback from specific European countries for, say, summer bookings. But if tensions continue, and we're already seeing signal from other countries that there's a pullback, this could be sort of a foreshadowing of what's to come for foreign travel to the U.S. Minimally, but it's something to look at.
All right.
In other words, kiss tourism goodbye for a little while. Canadians don't mess around. And again, I want to point this out. Canadians do not mess around. When you call them out and you sit there and say you're going to force them to do something, Canadians are nice. This is true. But they're certainly not pushovers. And they've shown that through their money. And yes, if you don't think tourism is not going to take a hit in the United States from Canadians, you are delusional. Even in my home state of Tennessee, where tourism, again, is a number one thing. If less people are coming to the States, that means less money is being spent. That means that, well, the state's going to take a hit. All because the convict decided to input tariffs in for no reason. So, again, it is amazing to me how all these things, anytime a tariff is put in, it always comes back to the simple fact of the matter that it harms other people, except the ones who don't understand how tariffs work. But that being said, guys, a couple more news before we get to our Feel Good segment. Imagine you are a teacher that is trying to basically introduce acceptance. And, well, this one teacher, a 6th grade history teacher, right, in Idaho, she has this picture. She has this poster. Everyone is welcome here. Of course, different colors of hands, hearts and hands. Everyone is welcome here. You can't beat that with a stick. If that doesn't say welcome everybody to learn, I don't know what does. Well, this teacher has been ordered to remove the signs from the classroom because, and here's the crazy part, because the sign themselves, where again, I just showed, where everyone is welcome here, the other sign that they have in there, the other sign the teacher has in there says this, quote unquote, that everyone in the classroom is welcome, important, accepted, respected, encouraged, valued, and equal. How do you beat that? That is something that we teach our kids. That everyone in the classroom is welcome, important, accepted, respected, encouraged, valued, and equal. You can't beat that with a stick. And at the same time, the school officials said that this could cause an issue. And that because of that, that the content had to be neutral. Or as they said, quote unquote, content neutral. That district policy set there, the bullshit excuse that the teacher was given was that the principal cited district policy that classrooms must respect the rights of people expressing different opinions and that the decorations are to be content neutral. Let's try that again. The rights of people expressing difference of opinions and that decorations are to be content neutral. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Everyone is welcome here seems to be very content neutral. Saying that everyone is equally important, valued, acknowledged, accepted, and equal seems to be content neutral. Let's be honest, guys. Let's be real honest where they have the problem. If the problem is, and the teacher hits it on the head, it's the fact that you're seeing a coalition of different colors. So yes, a bit of racism.